Elias was about to marry the man he loved, but somehow he wasn't invited to his own wedding. Not officially, not emotionally, not even practically. The first time he realized something was off, it was when Noah's mother referred to the wedding as our event. Not your wedding, not your big day, but our event. And she meant it. From the floral choices to the guest list, from the catering company to the Instagram mood board, every detail was handled without Elias. He was never asked what kind of music he liked, what food he wanted served, or even which of his friends should be invited. The entire process had been hijacked and turned into a public performance. For Noah's image, for his mother's pride, for social media engagement. Elias, somehow, was just funding it. Noah didn't object. Not once. When Elias gently asked if they could meet with the planner together, Noah smiled and said, "Babe, Mom's already handling everything." That was his response to nearly everything wedding related. And every time Elias tried to raise a thought or preference, he was met with the same polished dismissal. "Don't stress, it's all under control." Control. That word started to echo in Elias's head more than any vow ever could. They had been engaged for almost 10 months. In that time, Elias, who had built his own company from the ground up, found himself being treated like a decorative sponsor. Noah came from a different world. He was a model, charismatic, admired, and used to being the center of attention. His family was well-connected, image-conscious, and saw Elias not as a partner, but as a transaction. Elias paid for everything, not by request, but by default. The villa in Lake Como, the diamond-encrusted invitations, the vintage champagne flown in from France. His bank statements looked like luxury catalogs. Yet his opinions were missing from every line item. The final blow came one afternoon when Elias received a forwarded email from the planner and itinerary for a design meeting. His name wasn't on it. Instead, it read, "Attending Noah, Mr. Harrington, stylists, media rep." That was when it hit him. He wasn't getting married. He was funding a show. And not just any show, but one where he didn't even have a seat at the table, let alone a script. He was the ATM with a heartbeat, the backdrop to Noah's curated public love story. There was no softness left in the way Noah spoke to him, no warmth in the way his future in-laws treated him. Even the staff started addressing him like he was the other guy. But Elias didn't yell. He didn't walk away. Not yet, because he was smart, smarter than they knew. He began documenting everything, not out of spite, out of preparation. He logged expenses, tracked emails, saved every receipt. He stopped reacting and started preparing. While Noah's mother obsessed over which crystal chandelier to hang in the ballroom, Elias called his lawyer, quietly, precisely, without emotion. He had been through heartbreak before. He had been used before, but this time he was ready. This wasn't going to end in betrayal. It was going to end in business. His business. Because if they were going to reduce his love to a transaction, then he would make sure the contract said exactly what it needed to say. This time, he wasn't going to be the fool. He was going to be the one holding the pen. What would you do if they excluded you from your own future? Share your thoughts in the comments and follow Heart's story for the next chapter. Before the first wedding deposit was made, Elias had already hired a lawyer. It wasn't because he expected things to go wrong. It was because he had learned through loss, betrayal, and one very public breakup that love without clarity could cost you everything. His last relationship ended with a legal mess over a shared apartment. So when Noah proposed with a smile and a camera crew, Elias said yes. But later that night, he opened his laptop and scheduled a confidential consultation. His lawyer didn't ask questions, just listened. Elias outlined everything he'd be covering: the wedding costs. He had no access to Noah's family assets. There was no prenup, no joint business ventures. Only love and a long list of invoices with his name on them. That's when the lawyer suggested a contract. Not a traditional prenup, not a power play, but a private financial protection clause, signed solely by Elias, designed to shield his estate in the event of sudden marriage dissolution. It wasn't about mistrust. It was about structure, logic, survival. The key clause was this: if the marriage ended within 12 months, any funds Elias contributed toward wedding or household expenses would be treated as a loan with interest. A simple clause, legally binding, tucked into a notarized file under his name. He didn't even need Noah's signature, because the money was his. The risk was his. And now, so was the protection. While Noah and his mother curated floral arches for photo ops, Elias signed the paperwork in silence, his lawyer watching as he slid the pen across the page with steady hands. There was no bitterness, only a strange, cold sense of balance. Then Elias began collecting everything. He insisted all payments be routed through his business account. He demanded itemized invoices from every vendor. He ensured the wedding planner's contract named him as financial guarantor and made sure the cancellation clause would favor him, should he choose to activate it. He even asked his accountant to create a running tally. Every dollar, every euro, every tip for every stylist, filed, documented, time-stamped. Still, he smiled at Noah's parents, still kissed Noah on the cheek, still showed up to dress fittings, even though no one asked for his opinion. He played the role of the gracious, supportive fiancé, the successful tech investor with impeccable taste, and conveniently a limitless card. But the truth, he had stopped being a fiancé the moment they treated him like a funder. And now he was something else entirely. Elias understood contracts. He had spent over a decade negotiating tech acquisitions, closing deals where missing one clause could cost millions. Love, he realized, could be managed the same way. So when Noah brushed off his questions with, "It's fine, you don't need to worry," Elias stopped worrying. He was already protected. By the time the wedding entered its final phase, Elias had in his possession a complete financial ledger of all wedding costs, a signed legal declaration covering asset recovery, and a secondary bank account, unlinked to shared access, and a full copy of the wedding planning agreement with built-in cancellation terms. Noah had no idea, because while he was rehearsing speeches for their ceremony, Elias was preparing statements for his lawyer. And one night, sitting alone in his study, surrounded by candlelight in silence, Elias whispered to himself a sentence that didn't sound romantic, but sounded real. "If they want a wedding without me, then they can pay for it without me too." It started with the flowers, then the lighting team, then the stylist who demanded to be flown in from Milan. But nothing screamed excess louder than the dress. Not a suit, not a tuxedo, a custom-designed, hand-beaded couture dress selected by Noah himself. Not for Elias, not for tradition, but for shock value. Noah wanted their wedding to make headlines. That meant drama. That meant fashion. That meant spending $200,000 on a piece of fabric that wouldn't survive a single champagne spill. Elias stood there as Noah twirled in front of the mirror, flanked by photographers, stylists, and a champagne-sipping mother who cooed, "It's going to break the internet." They didn't even acknowledge his presence until a production assistant nudged him to snap a few behind-the-scenes shots. That moment didn't hurt. It clarified. He wasn't getting married. He was bankrolling a spectacle. The irony, Elias thought, was that he could afford this. All of it, twice over. But that wasn't the point. What stung wasn't the money. It was the way no one thought to ask him if he wanted to spend it. He had never said yes to the dress. He had never seen the venue contract. He had never chosen the champagne they toasted with. And yet, every single bill came to his name. Noah never said thank you. He only said, "It's going to be perfect." And maybe it would have been if it was just a show, a press launch, a runway stunt, but it wasn't. It was a wedding. At least, that's what Elias had hoped it would be. He returned home that evening with the invoice still fresh in his inbox. $200,000, paid in full, automatically. Elias stared at the confirmation email, then flagged it in red and dropped it into the folder titled Reclaimable Assets. He didn't reply to Noah's text that night. He didn't need to. because something inside had clicked. He wasn't just funding the wedding, he was financing his own erasure. Every design choice made without him, every compliment directed only at Noah, every decision framed around aesthetics, not emotion. Elias had become invisible in the house he paid for, in the life he was building, and now in the marriage he had once hoped would be his refuge. That weekend, Noah's mother hosted a brunch at a luxury rooftop venue. Elias wasn't invited until the night before, and even then, only as an afterthought. If you're free and the text read, he went anyway. Out of curiosity, out of strategy. At the table, they spoke only about fabrics and flower walls. Noah was glowing. His mother was already planning how to repurpose the photos for magazine spreads. A brand partnership was in the works. Elias sat in silence, sipping coffee, watching them speak as if he were merely part of the backdrop. "You're so generous, Elias," she said at one point, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Noah is lucky you're supporting this." Supporting, not part of, not included in, just funding. Elias didn't reply, maybe. He didn't need to. The smile on his face was not warmth, it was calculation. By then, he had already forwarded a digital copy of every signed receipt to his lawyer. He had already updated the clause in his personal contract to include newly approved costs, and he had opened a new folder titled Trigger Clause Activation Materials. Because all it would take was one moment, one betrayal, one push, and the contract would become more than protection. It would become justice. As Noah toasted to the wedding of the decade, Elias looked around the room and realized he was the only one who knew how this story would end. And when it did, he'd be the one holding the receipts. 5 days before the wedding, Elias received a text from someone he hadn't spoken to in over a year. It was short, blunt. "You should know, I saw Noah at Amara's in Palm Springs. He wasn't alone." The message came from Adam, an old friend who never cared much for gossip, especially not the kind that started fires. Elias didn't reply. He didn't have to. He knew Adam had no reason to lie. And deep down, he also knew this wasn't new. Noah had been coming home later, claiming late-night fittings, late-night meetings, last-minute rehearsals. Always something that required being unreachable, untouchable, unaccounted for. Elias had let it slide because he was too tired to fight illusions, too busy tracking receipts to follow instincts. But now something shifted. He wanted confirmation. By the next morning, a private investigator had been hired. Elias didn't go through mutual friends. He went through a referral from his lawyer. Someone discreet, professional, quiet. Within 48 hours, the first set of photos arrived. Noah at a 5-star resort with a man Elias didn't recognize, holding hands, laughing, leaning in over wine glasses like it wasn't their secret, like it wasn't 5 days before his wedding. Elias didn't cry. He didn't even flinch, because it wasn't heartbreak, it was finality. He stared at the screen for minutes, then calmly added the photos to his contract folder. No rage, no confrontation, just confirmation. The only piece he had been waiting for. That same afternoon, Elias picked up the phone and called the wedding planner. "Hi, yes, this is Elias Harrington. I need to cancel all services effective immediately." "Yes, under Clause 7C of our agreement. I'll send a follow-up in writing." Noah didn't even know the contract had a Clause 7C. He'd never read a single page. By sunset, Elias had officially terminated every vendor agreement, the villa reservation, the champagne delivery, the flower shipment scheduled for the next morning. All of it, halted, legally, quietly, without fanfare. He didn't tell Noah, not that day, not the next. He let him keep pretending. Let him post teaser photos of sneak peek fittings. Let him text excitedly about the cake tasting. Elias responded with single emojis. Nothing more. He didn't need to interrupt the fantasy, because he was writing the final scene, 2 days before the ceremony. Elias sent an email. Subject line, read the contract you forgot to ask about. Attachment divorce papers. Body one sentence. You owe me $648,000 unless you prefer to go to court. Noah called within minutes. Elias didn't answer. He sent another text, then another, then a voicemail filled with confusion, bargaining, and a quiet tremble of panic. But it was too late. Elias had already initiated asset recovery. The contract didn't just protect him, it outlined repayment in full, with documentation already submitted. The lawyer had all of it, the invoices, the transfer logs, the booking confirmations. Every dollar Noah's family thought came from a joint fund had, in fact, come from Elias alone, and it was all claimable. Later that night, Elias walked through the apartment one last time. He collected only what was his, what had always been his. No theatrics, just calm. He paused at the closet, at the tuxedo bag still untouched. He didn't open it. There was no wedding. Not anymore. Instead, there was a package waiting to be delivered the next morning. Inside, a full printed copy of the contract, a copy of the cancellation letters, a statement of the amount owed, and a USB containing the photos. It would arrive on Noah's doorstep the morning he was supposed to say, "I do," but Elias was done saying anything. The morning of what was supposed to be the wedding, Noah woke up to silence. No champagne, no florists, no media vans, no guests, just a manila envelope at his front door, sealed, hand-delivered, and labeled in neat block letters for Noah Harrington, personal and confidential. Inside was everything: the contract, the debt summary, the notarized cancellation letters, a breakdown of the $648,000 Elias had spent, and the high-definition photos of Noah with the man from Palm Springs. By noon, the text started pouring in. From Noah, from his mother, from unknown numbers tied to stylists and brand reps. Panic was setting in. Sponsorship deals evaporated. One fashion outlet pulled their feature before it even published. Noah's name began trending, but for all the wrong reasons. Elias didn't answer any calls. He didn't need to. The contract had spoken. Later that day, Noah's mother tried to arrange a private meeting through a mutual contact. Elias declined. He had nothing left to say to anyone who only saw his worth in dollars. He had paid enough. Then came the legal threats. Noah's family tried to fight the repayment, claimed emotional distress, claimed the contract was too aggressive, claimed Elias was vindictive. But the court didn't agree, because the evidence was airtight. Every expense, every signature, every term, written, filed, executed. The judge upheld the entire agreement. Noah was ordered to repay Elias in full within 6 months. And when the money came in, Elias didn't smile. He just quietly transferred it into a foundation account. He called it the Harrington Grant, a private fund to support LGBTQ+ individuals escaping financial abuse within relationships. Because he wasn't the only one who had been reduced to a wallet. He knew that now. A month later, while sitting in his new office overlooking the Pacific, Elias received a call from an unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. It was Lucy. The man Noah had cheated with. His voice sounded thin, bitter. "I thought we were building a life, but apparently he had nothing. You wiped him out." Elias didn't respond, because he didn't need to explain himself to anyone still chasing what was never real. He closed the message, logged out of the email thread, and stared at the transfer receipt still glowing on his screen. $648,000 repaid, every cent returned, every lie accounted for, every plan they had made dismantled by the man they thought wouldn't fight back. Elias didn't just get his money, he got something far more valuable: his dignity, his peace, and a new story written on his own terms. That night, he stepped onto the balcony of his oceanfront home. The air was cool, clean, quiet, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel invisible. He felt whole, and in that stillness, Elias smiled not out of revenge, but because he had chosen himself. Have you ever walked away from something that no longer honored your worth? Tell us in the comments and follow Heart Story for more true stories that turn pain into power.